God doesn't exist, and the idea that the human being is the measure of all things.
But then the question appears almost immediately. What exactly are these things being measured? Are they good or are they evil? And the truth is, some of them are clearly dark and dangerous. There is one enormous manuscript that seems to defy reason itself. A book long feared, restricted, and wrapped in mystery. That book is the Codex Gigas, often called the Devil's Bible, and it holds a powerful place in historical memory. Legend says a monk once begged the devil for help to complete an impossible task, writing the entire manuscript in a single night. But what exactly does this strange book contain? Why would a volume associated with sacred learning also include material tied to forbidden occult practices? And could it hold knowledge considered too dangerous for ordinary people to read? The monk's pact with darkness. The Codex Gigas is believed to have originated in a secluded monastery in Bohemia, far removed from the distractions of the outside world and deeply rooted in strict spiritual life. According to the legend, the manuscript was created by a monk who had been condemned for a terrible offense. Historians still debate what that offense actually was. Some suggest heresy. Others believe it may have involved rebellion, sacrilege, or another grave violation. Whatever the cause, his punishment was said to be horrifying. He would be sealed alive within a wall. Facing death, the monk supposedly begged for mercy. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he promised to produce a single book that would gather all human knowledge into one extraordinary volume. It would include sacred religious writings, philosophical reflection, scientific thought, and accounts of supernatural forces. But as the deadline drew closer, he is said to have realized the scale of what he had promised. No ordinary man could finish such a massive work in so little time. And so, according to the legend, he made a desperate choice. The story claims he called upon the devil and asked for supernatural help to complete the Codex Gigas in one night, offering his soul in exchange. Out of gratitude, or perhaps as a permanent mark of ownership, the devil's image was said to be placed inside the manuscript forever. Some historical traditions go even further. They claim the monk was eventually driven mad by terrifying visions, haunted by strange figures, and tormented by the voices of unseen entities. Before the end, he reportedly warned his fellow monks with chilling words. The devil watches over the Codex, and the Codex watches him in return. That warning has echoed through the centuries. Was the monk simply broken by fear and guilt? Or had he truly unleashed something far darker than he ever intended? It's impossible consistency. In sheer physical scale, the Codex Gigas is astonishing. It stands nearly 3 feet tall, weighs more than 165 pounds, and contains hundreds of densely written pages, along with elaborate illustrations. What has especially troubled scholars is the remarkable uniformity of the handwriting throughout the manuscript. Unlike most medieval texts, which often show signs of fatigue, aging, emotional change, or interruptions in the scribe's work, the Codex Gigas appears strikingly consistent from beginning to end. That strange steadiness has raised disturbing questions. How could one person maintain the same style and precision across such a vast manuscript? To some, it almost looks less like a long human effort and more like a work carried out under an unnatural force, as though something beyond ordinary endurance guided the hand behind it. Examinations of the ink have added even more intrigue. Some reports suggest the presence of substances not commonly associated with the period, including traces of mercury and rare metallic compounds, sometimes linked in later interpretation to alchemical practices. Because of these unusual elements, some historians and speculative writers have wondered whether the monk used preservation methods or ritual techniques that went beyond accepted medieval knowledge. Others have imagined something more sinister, that the ink itself was meant to do more than preserve words on parchment. According to such theories, every line may have been intended to serve a double purpose, preserving the manuscript physically while also binding a darker force into the text itself, allowing the codex to carry an unsettling presence through the centuries. And that leads to an even more troubling possibility. What if the strange composition of the ink was not merely practical? What if each stroke was designed to hold a hidden power of its own? The portrait of the devil. Among the most famous and disturbing elements of the Codex Gigas is its full-page image of the devil. It is one of the manuscript's most recognizable features, and for many viewers, also its most unsettling. The figure appears twisted, alert, and deeply menacing. Its eyes seem fixed with unnatural intensity, and its presence clashes sharply with the holy texts that surround it elsewhere in the manuscript. Compared with many earlier medieval depictions of demons, this image feels unusually direct and vivid. It does not seem distant or symbolic in the way many religious illustrations do. Instead, it appears almost confrontational, as if the figure could step beyond the page at any moment. Some researchers and interpreters have suggested that this image was never meant to be decoration alone. In their view, it may have served as an invitation, an opening through which the devil's presence could dwell within the manuscript itself. The design around the portrait only deepens the mystery. Large areas of empty white space surround the figure, creating a visual contrast so sharp that the eye is drawn straight toward its expression. To some observers, this arrangement feels deliberate, almost ritualistic, as though the image was meant to command attention and hold it. Because of this, some have described the portrait as a kind of incantation in visual form, a device meant to trap or anchor demonic energy inside the book, while extending influence over those who study it. Others interpret it differently. Some see it as a barrier, a symbolic prison meant to keep evil contained within the manuscript. Others believe it functions as a ward, a protective image designed not to invite darkness, but to confine it. Yet the eerie stories surrounding the portrait have never disappeared. Many people who have looked at it closely have described a deep sense of unease, fear, or the feeling that they were somehow being watched. For those drawn to the supernatural interpretation, such reactions are not accidental. They see them as signs that the devil is not merely depicted in the image, but present through it, observing anyone who dares to meet his gaze. So the question remains, is this only a haunting illustration from the medieval world? Or could it represent something more? A doorway through which dark power reaches into human reality. The Forbidden Chapters. Another reason the Codex Gigas continues to fascinate and disturb people is the unusual range of material it contains. The manuscript does not limit itself to sacred scripture alone. Instead, it brings together religious texts with writings associated with exorcism, demonology, ritual practice, and other forms of esoteric knowledge. This blending of the holy and the forbidden is one of the book's greatest mysteries. It presents material that seems divided between reverence and danger, faith and fear, doctrine and secrecy. Within its pages are texts connected to biblical tradition, but also passages that later readers have associated with occult practice and ritual formulas. Over time, some of this material would be linked to the kinds of ideas that later appeared in grimoires, manuals associated with ceremonial magic and darker spiritual practices. That is what makes the Codex Gigas so unsettling to many people. It does not read like a manuscript devoted to a single purpose. Instead, it feels like a collision of worlds, sacred truth beside forbidden knowledge, prayer beside invocation, order beside shadow. And that is precisely why the book still provokes fear and fascination. Was it meant to preserve knowledge, to warn against evil, or to hide something far more dangerous within the appearance of religious authority? This fusion of sacred teaching and forbidden knowledge suggests that the monk may have had a deep fascination with occult practice. Perhaps he was trying to understand the forces he believed he had awakened, or perhaps he hoped to master them. One of the most notorious references is vinum diaboli, a phrase often translated as the wine of the devil. It is described as a ritual mixture supposedly used to establish contact with demonic entities. That detail has led some to believe the monk was not merely copying strange rites from older sources. He may have been testing them himself, blending acts of devotion with practices associated with dark magic. The language of the passage makes this tension impossible to ignore. It presents a figure caught between reverence and transgression, between spiritual discipline and dangerous curiosity. And that raises a troubling question. Was the monk studying these sinister forces in order to understand them and protect humanity from them? Or was he trying to harness them for his own purposes? The Codex Gigas seems to stand at the uneasy boundary between light and darkness. The inclusion of such material within a manuscript tied to holy learning challenges the line between faith and heresy. So what was the true purpose of the book? Was the Codex Gigas created as a means of confronting evil? Or was it intended as an instrument through which evil could be used? Lost pages and hidden practices. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the Codex Gigas is the disappearance of several pages. According to legend, those missing leaves may once have contained the most dangerous material in the entire manuscript. Spells, prophecies, and invocations considered too perilous to remain in human hands. It is said that monks tore out those pages deliberately. They feared that whatever was written there could bring about disaster if it were ever read aloud, studied too closely, or put into practice. The intentional removal of those sections has fueled centuries of speculation. If the pages were truly taken out on purpose, then perhaps the Codex once held knowledge believed to be too destructive for anyone to possess. Knowledge that could upset the natural order or invite forces far beyond human control. In recent years, some researchers have pointed to faint impressions and traces left behind, where the missing leaves once were. These marks, they argue, may preserve fragments of symbols and cryptic lines that hint at what those vanished pages originally contained. Such findings have only intensified the mystery. Some now speculate that the missing section may have included a ritual capable of summoning an ancient dark power, something even more terrifying than the devil as he is commonly imagined. Others take the theory in a different direction. A number of scholars and enthusiasts believe the missing pages were never destroyed at all. Instead, they may have been hidden away in sealed chambers, private collections, or buried within other forgotten manuscripts, waiting for someone reckless or bold enough to recover them. The idea that these pages may still exist casts a heavy shadow over the Codex itself. It suggests that whatever force lies dormant within its history has not vanished, but only been concealed. So the question remains deeply unsettling. Were those lost pages simply removed for safety? Or were they part of a forbidden rite capable of unleashing the ultimate form of evil, the curse of the Codex? Many people believe the Codex Gigas carries a curse. Over the centuries, it has been linked in legend and rumor to a long chain of misfortune, strange incidents, and deeply unsettling experiences. One story claims that in the 15th century, a fire nearly destroyed the monastery where the Codex was kept. Yet somehow the manuscript itself survived. To many, that seemed more than coincidence. Some interpreted its survival as a dark omen. They believed the book endured because something within it refused to perish, as though evil forces were preserving it in order to continue spreading their influence. Stories of tragedy have followed the Codex for generations. Those said to have protected or studied it have, in some accounts, suffered sudden deaths, mental collapse, or unhealthy obsession. Even in modern times, researchers who have examined the manuscript have described disturbing sensations. Some speak of sudden chills, nightmares filled with strange figures, or an oppressive feeling of fear that stayed with them long after they had left its presence. For believers in the curse, these experiences are not isolated. They see them as signs of a dark force attached to the Codex, one that draws people closer and then consumes them through fixation and dread. According to that view, the book does more than frighten. It seduces. It lures the curious deeper and deeper into its mystery until they lose themselves trying to uncover what it hides. As long as that legend survives, the Codex Gigas remains more than a medieval artifact. It becomes a symbol of lasting darkness, a presence that casts a shadow over anyone willing to search too deeply into its secrets. And that leaves one final, chilling thought. Is there truly something waiting beneath the surface of the Codex? Something ready to destroy whoever dares to open it without understanding what it contains? Prophecies within the text. Many readers believe the dense writing of the Codex Gigas contains hidden layers of meaning. Within its complex passages and strange symbols, they believe there are prophetic messages woven into the text. These supposed prophecies appear intertwined with religious material, warnings, and occult elements. To some interpreters, certain sections seem to describe future catastrophes, major upheavals, and moments of death and destruction. Some have even claimed that parts of the Codex resemble later historical tragedies, including plague and warfare, with descriptions that seem eerily close to events that unfolded in the real world. Because these passages are rarely direct, interpretation has varied widely. The language is often symbolic, veiled in metaphor, and difficult to pin down with certainty. That ambiguity has only expanded the legend. For some, the Codex Gigas is not just a manuscript of the past. It is a prophetic map, a coded warning that reveals what lies ahead only to those capable of deciphering it. Among the most frightening interpretations is one often summarized in a grim phrase: "The shadows will rise, and the lost will return." To believers in the manuscript's darker meaning, this points to an approaching final crisis, an age when imprisoned evil will be released and chaos will spread across the world. Under that interpretation, the Codex Gigas is far more than an artifact preserved in history. It becomes a living text, a document whose power extends beyond its creation and reaches into events still to come. And that leads to a haunting question. Is the Codex Gigas simply a relic from a troubled past, or is it a prophecy pointing toward an even darker future? The Devil's Key and the Hidden Crypt. Another persistent legend claims that the Codex Gigas was written in secret within a crypt beneath the monastery, a hidden chamber known only to a small circle of monks bound by silence. According to myth, that underground space held the final remnants of a forbidden rite called the Devil's Key. This ritual was said to be an invocation powerful enough to open a passage between worlds, linking human reality to a realm of chaos, suffering, and spiritual ruin. Descriptions tied to the ritual speak of exact spoken formulas, precise timing aligned with celestial events, and the use of rare prohibited substances. All of these, according to the legend, were recorded in careful detail within the Codex. The story grows darker still. It says that several monks once entered the crypt to perform the rite, but never returned. When they vanished, the only thing left behind was the echo of their chanting drifting through the monastery's empty corridors. Some versions of the legend add another element, a hidden object deep within the crypt that serves as the final source of the ritual's power. It may have been a relic, they say, perhaps even something touched by the devil himself. If such a crypt truly exists, and if the ritual was ever real, then the implications are terrifying. Anyone who managed to decode its instructions might gain the power to summon long-forgotten demons or command dark forces on a scale never before imagined. That possibility is what gives the Codex Gigas such an atmosphere of urgency and dread. It is not only mysterious because it is ancient, it is feared because some believe its greatest secret may still be waiting to be unlocked. The mere idea that such a crypt could exist, hidden from view and protected by dark ritual, raises an unsettling possibility. It suggests that the highest form of evil described in the legend may not have vanished at all. It may simply be lying dormant, waiting for the one person reckless enough to awaken it. That possibility leads to an even darker question. Could this secret chamber serve as a point of contact between our world and some shadow-filled dimension beyond it? The monk's final words. In what are said to have been his final moments, the monk allegedly left behind one last cryptic message. It was scribbled in the margin of an obscure section of the Codex Gigas, a broken fragment born out of fear, exhaustion, and despair. His words were brief, disordered, and deeply disturbing. The shadows watch. The text is ravenous. For centuries, scholars and interpreters have struggled to understand what he meant. The statement is strange, ominous, and open to many readings, which is why it has inspired debate for generations. Another line is often connected to that final warning. In time, the Codex will claim what belongs to it. To some, this is a clear sign that the forces believed to dwell within the manuscript were never meant to remain silent forever. They see it as a warning that anyone who opens the Codex too deeply may eventually fall under its influence. Others take a more human view. They believe the monk's last message reflects mental collapse, a final outburst from a man overwhelmed by guilt, terror, or prolonged isolation. But there are also those who see the note not as madness, but as prophecy. In their view, the monk was not describing his condition. He was describing the future. Combined with the other obscure signs and symbols scattered throughout the manuscript, this message has led some to believe that the Codex Gigas will one day play a decisive role in human destiny. According to one theory, the monk briefly glimpsed what the Codex was truly capable of. He saw a future in which the forces of light and darkness preserved within the book would finally come into direct conflict. That possibility remains impossible to prove, but it has never stopped the speculation. The Codex still holds unanswered questions, and this final note remains one of the darkest reminders of its enduring mystery. So perhaps the most chilling question is this: has the Codex Gigas been waiting all this time for the right moment to reveal what it has kept hidden from the world? Symbols hidden in plain sight. One of the most disturbing features of the Codex Gigas is its unusual system of symbols. These markings appear in the spaces between lines, around illustrations, and along the borders of certain chapters. At first glance, they can seem merely decorative, but when examined more carefully, they begin to suggest something more deliberate. Researchers who have studied these visual patterns argue that they form an intricate structure of sacred geometry. The shapes and sequences resemble symbols found in ancient mystical systems, some of which stand in tension with accepted Christian teaching. Because of this, many believe the symbols were not placed there at random. They may represent an effort to hide deeper meanings within the manuscript, meanings connected to esoteric knowledge, ritual systems, or concealed teachings. Among the recurring forms are linked circles, triangular arrangements, and highly detailed geometric patterns. To some observers, these are not artistic embellishments. They are coded signs. Certain studies have even noted similarities between these designs and symbols found in early Kabbalistic texts. If that comparison is valid, it would suggest that the monk, or whoever designed the manuscript, may have drawn from mystical traditions beyond the boundaries of Christianity. That possibility is striking, especially given the time in which the Codex was created. During that era, exploring pagan systems or heretical forms of spirituality would have been dangerous, even forbidden. This is why the blending of multiple symbolic traditions in a single manuscript feels so unusual. For some interpreters, it points to a deliberate attempt to combine different forms of spiritual power into one unified structure. In that sense, the Codex Gigas becomes difficult to classify. It is not simply religious, not purely occult, and not easily confined to one category. Its dense web of symbolism hints at a hidden purpose. Some believe it was intended as a gateway to total knowledge, bringing together prohibited signs and sacred forms into one vision of reality, one that includes both light and darkness. And that leads to a profound question. Was the Codex Gigas designed to unite forbidden symbols into a single worldview, opening a path toward every kind of knowledge, no matter the cost? The dark side of illumination. The Codex Gigas is also remarkable for its elaborate illustrations. Unlike many medieval manuscripts, its images do more than decorate the text. They contribute to the manuscript's strange and unsettling atmosphere. Among these illustrations are unusual plants, monstrous figures, and distorted forms that some have compared to imagery later found in Renaissance alchemical works. Together, they give the manuscript an eerie quality, as though it contains not just information, but a presence. One particularly troubling image has drawn repeated attention. It depicts a twisted tree whose roots appear intertwined with abstract symbols and mysterious characters, almost like veins running through living tissue. Interpretations of this image vary widely. Some see it as a symbolic representation of the tree of life. Others believe it suggests something far darker, a passage to the underworld, or a path through which hostile spirits might enter the human realm. Urban legends have attached themselves to this page as well. Some claim that anyone who touches it may suffer nightmares, hallucinations, or a deep sense of dread. There are also stories of readers who spent hours examining the drawing and later reported disturbing visions. One modern account describes a researcher who became so shaken after studying the image that he abandoned his historical work altogether, leaving behind only scattered notes that seem to reveal emotional collapse. Whether such stories are true or exaggerated, they have strengthened the Codex's reputation. This image, like several others in the manuscript, seems to carry a purpose beyond visual design. To some, it functions almost like a visual incantation, an image meant not merely to be seen, but to pull the viewer inward, deeper into a world of fear, darkness, and supernatural tension. That is why these illustrations continue to trouble people. They do not feel passive. They feel active, almost participatory. So the question becomes difficult to ignore. Are these illuminations simply artistic expressions? Or are they visual spells meant to draw the reader into the manuscript's darker reality? A disturbing harmony with cosmic cycles. Another layer of mystery surrounding the Codex Gigas involves its apparent relationship to astronomical and cosmic patterns. Some interpreters believe the manuscript does more than record knowledge from its own age. They argue that it is aligned in subtle ways with larger cycles in the heavens. Astrologers, mystics, and alternative researchers who have studied the Codex claim that certain parts of the manuscript correspond to lunar phases, planetary alignments, and solar eclipses. According to these interpretations, the manuscript is structured in a way that reflects celestial timing. Some even argue that these correlations connect the Codex to major events in history, including plague, war, and periods of widespread destruction. From that perspective, the manuscript appears not only descriptive, but predictive. Its symbolism and timing seem to mirror calamities that later unfolded in the real world. What has caused even greater concern among some modern interpreters is the claim that the Codex may contain references to a major conjunction expected within this century. One especially vague passage has drawn repeated attention. It includes language that some summarize as, "The shadows of old will reclaim their place." That line has led to intense speculation. Some believe it points to a catastrophic celestial alignment, one that could trigger access to another realm or reopen forces long thought sealed away. In the darkest version of the theory, such an alignment would act as a gateway. When the heavens move into the correct pattern, ancient powers from another dimension would be able to cross into our world. Because of these ideas, some no longer see the Codex Gigas merely as a book of record or reflection. Instead, they view it as an instrument tied to prophecy, timing, and forces capable of influencing the course of history itself. This possibility changes the way the manuscript is imagined. It becomes less a witness to the past, and more a mechanism counting down towards something still to come. And that leads to one final question in this section. Could the Codex Gigas be tracking the passage of time toward a cosmic alignment that would bring catastrophe upon humanity? The manuscript's unnatural endurance. Across its long existence, the Codex Gigas has shown a resilience that many people find difficult to explain. For a manuscript of such age, size, and complexity, its survival has often seemed extraordinary. Across the centuries, the Codex Gigas has survived an astonishing number of disasters. It has endured floods, fires, warfare, and the chaos caused by human conflict. Yet the manuscript itself has remained intact through events that destroyed countless other treasures of the past. Its pages and binding have withstood both time and deliberate attempts at destruction. During the 30 Years' War, when many priceless manuscripts and relics were looted or ruined, the Codex Gigas became the subject of one especially disturbing account. According to that story, Swedish soldiers tried to carry the manuscript away from a besieged abbey. But despite the disorder and devastation around them, they found the book impossibly heavy, almost like stone. Some even claimed it gave off an unnatural heat. In the wreckage of the monastery, the Codex was said to have remained untouched. The soldiers eventually abandoned the effort, convinced that the book was cursed or somehow protected by dark forces. When local people later found the manuscript still seemingly unharmed, their fear only deepened. To them, its survival was not ordinary fortune. It was proof that some hostile power was guarding it. For some interpreters, this endurance means more than physical durability. They believe the Codex is, in some sense, still alive. The pact that gave it existence, they argue, is also what preserves it, resisting every attempt to erase it so that its dark legacy can continue. From that perspective, supernatural forces have kept the Codex Gigas intact across generations, shielding its contents and ensuring that it remains in the world. And so the question remains, is the Devil's Bible merely an old book, or is it a feared object sustained by an unseen power that refuses to let it be destroyed? The Codex and the Cult of the Black Flame. Another dark legend connected to the Codex Gigas involves a secret society sometimes called the Cult of the Black Flame. Rumors of this hidden group have circulated for years, feeding the belief that the manuscript is surrounded not only by mystery but by active devotion. According to the tale, this clandestine order treats the Codex as a sacred relic. Its followers supposedly believe that the manuscript contains the key to humanity's true origin and offers enlightenment through knowledge that has been forbidden to ordinary people. Members of the cult are said to have devoted their lives to studying the book. Through rituals, obscure traditions, and relentless decoding, they seek to uncover its deeper meanings. Some accounts claim that these followers gathered in secret throughout Europe, reciting rites drawn from the Codex and attempting to invoke supernatural beings. Witnesses have even described strange markings painted onto ancient trees and ruined stones, believed to be ritual signs or protective wards. Others reported seeing shadowy figures disappear into the night near such places, adding even more weight to the rumors. There is, of course, no official proof that such a cult exists, but the persistence of these stories has shaped the Codex's reputation. They suggest, at least in legend, that a hidden group may be working to preserve the manuscript's influence while keeping its darkest knowledge away from outsiders. This theory gives the Codex Gigas an even more troubling role. If the book truly contains a path to power, then who are these supposed guardians? Are they sincere seekers of forbidden truth, or merely instruments in a darker design they do not fully understand? The Hungry Book. Some of the most unsettling modern accounts describe the Codex Gigas as if it were alive. almost as if it desires to be read, studied, and understood. Scholars who have spent long periods examining the manuscript have sometimes spoken of strange psychological effects. These experiences vary. For some, it begins as an intense urge to keep reading. For others, it becomes a fixation they cannot control. Certain readers have reported dreaming of the Codex while they sleep. They describe seeing its pages in their minds and hearing voices urging them to return, to continue reading, to uncover what still remains hidden. These voices are often compared to whispers of buried knowledge, murmured secrets, or ritual incantations calling the reader back. Because of such stories, some people no longer view the Codex Gigas as a passive historical object. They imagine it instead as a living presence, something that feeds on the thoughts, emotions, and obsessions of those who study it. A few accounts go even further. People who spent time alone with the manuscript in archival settings have claimed to hear faint whispers repeating phrases such as "seek the truth within" or "complete the ritual." Whether real or imagined, the effect is the same in these stories. The deeper a person goes into the Codex, the more fragile their mental balance becomes. Curiosity turns into obsession, and obsession becomes something destructive. Legends say that many who devoted themselves to understanding the Codex met tragic ends. Some lost their sanity, some abandoned their work, their lives, or both. These stories have helped build one of the darkest theories surrounding the manuscript: that it does not merely carry a curse, but actively draws strength from human attention. So the question becomes even more disturbing. Could the Codex be more than haunted? Could it be an object that feeds on the minds that seek to understand it? Heaven and hell in conflict. Some religious interpreters present the Codex Gigas in even more dramatic terms. In their view, the manuscript is not only mysterious or cursed, it is a battleground. According to this idea, angels and demons are locked in an endless struggle within its pages, with parchment and ink serving as the field of conflict. From that perspective, the Codex represents an effort by evil to corrupt what is holy. By mixing sacred scripture with forbidden ritual material and demonic knowledge, the book becomes a tool for distorting Christian truth from within. Instead of openly opposing faith, this theory suggests that the Codex undermines it subtly. By placing dark knowledge alongside holy writing, it plants confusion, fear, and doubt in the minds of its readers. Under this interpretation, a hidden war unfolds inside the manuscript. Each prayer, invocation, or exorcism becomes part of a deeper conflict, drawing the reader step by step toward shadow rather than safety. The implications are enormous. In this view, the Codex Gigas is not just the desperate creation of one condemned monk. It is a weapon in a larger cosmic struggle between good and evil. To read it, then, is not simply to study history. It is to step into an ongoing contest of influence, one force attempting to preserve truth, the other seeking to corrupt and dominate. That is why some believe the Codex occupies such a dangerous place in legend. Its power is not merely symbolic. It lies in the possibility that it participates in an ancient war still unfolding. And so the question sharpens again. Is the Codex Gigas the highest expression of Satan's deception? A hidden conflict written into the lives of all who dare to seek its meaning? The final mystery, the Devil's Hand. Among all the legends surrounding the Codex Gigas, one of the most controversial is also one of the darkest: the belief that the devil himself helped create it. Historians remain divided on this point. Some reject the claim completely. Others leave open the possibility that the monk's supposed bargain involved more than inspiration and included direct supernatural aid. Those who support the darker interpretation often point to specific illustrations, especially the portrait of the devil. They argue that the detail, style, and precision in these images appear far beyond what a single exhausted scribe could have produced under extreme pressure. The depth of the eyes, the subtle shading, and the lifelike intensity of the expressions have led some to argue that the artist possessed either extraordinarily rare skill or something beyond human ability. A more recent artistic examination reportedly noted unusual ink pressure and shading patterns that do not align neatly with conventional quill techniques. To some, this suggests that another influence may have guided the hand behind the work. From there, the theory becomes more unsettling. Perhaps the devil did not merely inspire the monk. Perhaps he directed each stroke, leaving his own mark throughout the manuscript. For believers in that idea, the influence is not symbolic at all. It is physical, deliberate, and permanent, a tangible expression of demonic will written into the pages themselves. This theory also carries a frightening implication for the present. If the devil truly helped shape the manuscript, then perhaps he still uses it now, watching those who study it, influencing them, and perhaps even controlling those who go too far. That possibility leads to one last chilling thought. Could the true author of the Codex still be hidden behind every line, every image, and every stroke of ink? The hallucinations of the damned over the years, many people who immerse themselves in research on the Codex Gigas have described experiences they considered deeply disturbing. To them, these events suggested that the manuscript was not passive but aware and profoundly evil. Some reported hallucinations after prolonged study. These accounts include hearing voices from nowhere, seeing shadowy or spectral figures, and sensing an unseen presence nearby. Others claimed they felt watched constantly, as though invisible eyes followed their movements. Dark forms appeared at the edges of their vision, only to disappear the moment they tried to focus on them. One especially unsettling story comes from a 17th century scribe who spent months copying portions of the Codex. He later claimed the pages sometimes seemed to move on their own, and that the devil's portrait appeared to shift and change as he looked at it, almost like a living thing responding to his attention. Modern psychology has proposed possible explanations for such reports. One theory compares these incidents to a kind of bibliomancy-induced psychosis, a mental state in which intense belief, fear, and obsessive concentration around a supposedly cursed object triggers severe psychological disturbance. From that point of view, the manuscript itself may not be acting upon anyone. Instead, the combination of expectation, isolation, and emotional investment could generate the terrifying experiences described. Yet not everyone accepts that explanation. Some researchers remain convinced that psychology alone cannot account for the full range of testimonies linked to the Codex. They continue to argue that a more malevolent force is involved, one that calls out to the curious and lures them into a deeper connection with the darkness bound inside the manuscript. Whatever the truth may be, the effect of these stories is undeniable. They keep the legend alive and discourage many from exploring the Codex too deeply. So once again, the question returns: is the Codex Gigas drawing readers into its shadows? Or are these visions nothing more than the mind turning fear into illusion? The language of the damned one. Of the least discussed yet most unsettling features of the Codex Gigas is its language. Although the manuscript is primarily written in Latin, as many medieval works were, some sections appear in a strange and difficult dialect that has resisted easy translation. These unusual passages often occur in sections related to ritual activity and exorcism, which has led some to believe they contain instructions or formulas central to the darker practices associated with the Codex. Attempts to decipher this language have produced conflicting results. Linguists have identified a puzzling blend of forms, with elements that seem to echo Old Latin, Hebrew, and other obscure influences. Because of that complexity, some have speculated that these passages represent a kind of hidden code, a language meant only for a select few who knew how to read it. Others go further still. They suggest that the monk did not invent or study this language on his own, but received it through contact with forces beyond ordinary human understanding when he made his alleged pact. In that interpretation, the language becomes more than obscure. It becomes the speech of the damned, a coded expression of forbidden knowledge reserved for those initiated into its meaning. Its presence also reinforces the idea that the Codex Gigas was never meant for everyone. Perhaps the manuscript was designed to conceal its deepest secrets from the ignorant, revealing them only to readers capable of decoding its hidden layers. That possibility makes the Codex even more enigmatic. Its most dangerous meanings may not lie in what is plainly written, but in what has been concealed behind a language few can truly understand. Only those trained in such matters or willing to cross into dangerous territory could hope to uncover what those passages mean. Thank you for following this exploration into the hidden mysteries of the Codex Gigas. Stay with us for the next videos and tell us what you think. If the dark secrets of the past fascinate you, there is still much more to uncover.